Thank you for staying with us, viewers. We're continuing to discuss the case of the U.S. Navy SEALs who have been asked to come back to the U.S. because of deterioration of good order and discipline. And as I put to our other guests earlier on, it's not just really about that, is it? It's about just how U.S. servicemen have acted in many places, not just Iraq, but Afghanistan and otherwise as well. And the examples of Abu Ghraib and otherwise, of course, are in our minds and are engraved in our minds, really. To discuss this further, we're now joined by Michael Lane, who is the founder of the American Institute for Foreign Policy. He's joining us now from North Carolina via Skype. Also joining us via Skype is Lyal S. Sunga, who is a visiting professor at Raoul Wallenberg Institute of Human Rights and Humanitarian Law. He's joining us now from Lund in Sweden. Lyal and Michael, thank you both for joining us. Lyal, I'd like to start with you, if I may. What do you make of the cases, not just of the Navy SEALs, and of course, this case is one about rape and sexual assault, but just overall about the attitude on the part of these many servicemen and whether the political discussions back home and how now negatively Donald Trump speaks about foreigners, does that all play into how these men and women serving abroad act towards those around them?
The allegations are serious enough, and this is about actually sexual assault and use of alcohol, which has been prohibited in the Navy since, General Order 99 in 1914 was adopted. So it's a long-standing, very strict, absolute rule. And apparently during the Independence Day party and celebrations, etc., these things may have occurred. So those are serious enough. But what I'm even more perturbed about is the code of silence that seems to have prevailed here. That's a very, very bad sign. Sure, in all militaries, you're going to get some people that commit disciplinary violations or crimes. And we're talking about crimes. Now, it's much more serious if you don't have the possibility or let's say the effective command control over these kinds of issues. And so I'd like to see what the result will be, because we've seen some very disturbing things. You mentioned Donald Trump, and one could relate this very directly to SEAL Team 7 and the Foxtrot Platoon that we're talking about here was part of SEAL Team 7. Yeah. Because it was only in 2nd July, just a couple of weeks ago, that Edward Gallagher was Chief Special Warfare Operator, was let off on charges of premeditated murder, attempted murder, assault, and he got a minor, 4-month sentence for posing with a dead body. Yeah. So that sent a signal, I think, a very negative signal that they're
Lyal, if you allow me, I wanted to actually take that example of Eddie Gallagher that you just put forth and put that to Michael. Michael, the example of Eddie Gallagher, as I'm sure you can appreciate as well, is quite a disturbing one, isn't it? Because again, it goes to show that there is, in some ways, firstly, of course, we can talk about this brotherhood that exists within military servicemen. And while one can appreciate that, in this case, we're only talking about sexual assault, i.e. in the latest case, that is. But in Gallagher's case, it was murder and him posing beside a dead corpse. It goes to show almost, a brashness, doesn't it? And, I can do it all kind of attitude on the part of some of these men, doesn't it?
Well, when you serve in the military in any country, not just the United States, you have a camaraderie, a level of teamwork that is established. It's drilled into you during your training. You're all in it together. And so it's not surprising that in virtually all military units, you're going to have a sense of brotherhood or sisterhood, something that brings people together and gives them the incentive to, I've got your back, whether it's in a combat situation or in a misconduct garrison situation, as is alleged here. The more elite the forces, I think, the more that code of silence takes over. And so when you have something like a SEAL Team 7, it is not the way it's supposed to be done, but it is not at all surprising that there would be a code of silence and something like this would permeate. Now, when you look specifically at the Eddie Gallagher case, they had some evidence. The chain of command decided there was enough evidence to take it to trial. Charges were filed. He did go to a court-martial. But for the people who followed the trial, given the evidence that was presented at trial, there was really no way they were going to get a conviction. And for those people who don't know what happened, someone else confessed to the crime on the stand in the courtroom.
But to be fair, Michael, that person who confessed had immunity, guaranteed immunity. So, you know, it was sort of easy for a person to then say, listen, I did it under immunity.
Saying it wasn't an easy thing. I'm not even saying that it was a completely honest thing. And so it becomes up to the jury to weigh the credibility of the various people in the trial. But as an individual juror, as you're sitting there, when someone else confesses to the crime that the defendant is on trial for, makes it very, very difficult for them to find the defendant guilty.
Okay, so Lyal, you know, should we appreciate the fact, and I presume, of course, the answer would be yes, that at least the U.S. is holding such trials. It is at least acting when it finds out about any misconduct, however large, if we're talking about murder or otherwise, abuse, torture even. We can talk about Abu Ghraib, for example, and even in cases of, you know, less, I would say, severe cases like murder, sexual assault or otherwise, or even just alcoholism. Do you think we should appreciate that, or do you think that this, again, points to almost an attitude within the military when they're serving abroad?
Well, yeah, I agree with you that any accountability has to be welcomed, and there's no question about that. So, yes, I do agree with you. But I do want to comment on something that Michael said. And that is that, you know, the camaraderie is certainly an issue there, and it's a strong element, and it has to be appreciated in most circumstances. But it's not supposed to be used in a way, obviously, that where a code of silence breaks a code of honor. And that's what we're seeing. And on the Edward Gallagher case, it has to be appreciated that a lot of the evidentiary problems there were because there was a lot of resistance in terms of the investigation going forward. You know, when the Navy SEAL team, when the Navy Criminal Investigation Service went ahead, they faced a lot of resistance, and so they got into it about a year late. And by that time, physical evidence had been was no longer available, and then we had the surprise evidence that was alluded to. But to your other question, a broad question, I mean, if you see Trump, President Trump, trying to weigh in on the Gallagher trial, I mean, that's a violation of itself. That's undue influence, sends a wrong signal. Number two, you see, for example, him appointing Gina Haspel, who was responsible for oversight of black sites in Thailand, which were credibly reported to have been involved in extensive torture, or at least enhanced interrogation, as director of the CIA. And you have other very, very negative signs of this type. Indeed. So and in Abu Ghraib, you had the commander Karpinski just getting demoted to colonel status, etc. But and other consequences. But for me, not satisfying enough for the gravity of the violations involved.
Okay, so Michael, I'll give you the final word. What do you all the examples there that Lyal just cited? And Gina Haspel certainly is quite a disturbing one, Michael, as I'm sure you can appreciate with her background. But then Donald Trump himself, came in quite directly already talking about the Gallagher case before it had even concluded. What do you make of all that? Because again, it goes back to the question that I put to Lyal, that there is an attitude almost on the part of the U.S. establishment that it can do as it pleases overseas, and it'll really protect its men and women, whether they do wrong or not.
Donald Trump is certainly a more aggressive president than his predecessor. I think Barack Obama leaned over backwards to avoid these kind of situations. Some people would argue to the detriment of the United States being able to fulfill its mission. On the other hand, Donald Trump, by contrast, is really full speed ahead, all in, let's go for it. And it does create a climate where people say, okay, we're just going forward, damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, as John Paul Jones said. So it is not surprising that given the political situation that we're in today, once these things become public or once they are leaked to the press or whatever, they really get a lot more attention in today's politics than they would have 4 years ago. Are there more of them? Maybe. There's certainly a lot more reported and a lot more discussed in the press. And I think that's one of the reasons why SEAL Team 7 Foxtrot Platoon was recalled, was at some point, it's like, okay, we have to make a very public stand on this. We have to do something that sends a message to everybody that we will have order and discipline. And I think that is part and parcel of what happened to Foxtrot Platoon.
All right, we'll leave it there at that. But of course, you had Michael and Lyal for their time and, of course, their expert insight today. Viewers, throughout this segment, as we've been talking about this topic, it's an important topic to highlight because it's not just about sexual assault and rape within the ranks of the Navy SEALs or even other such forms of military servicemen who are in Iraq, Afghanistan, or elsewhere overseas. I believe one of the guests has spoken about servicemen who have been accused of many such actions in Japan, South Korea, elsewhere as well, rapes or just drunkenness, etc. It's about just the attitude that goes into all of this, doesn't it? The fact that they went into Iraq and Afghanistan with almost this, the foreigners and these citizens of those countries should be welcoming us in, and when that did not occur, there's almost this resentment and hatred on the part of some of these servicemen, and again, back at them vice versa from many of the citizens of those countries. And then that's where then ISIS or the like also came into existence. It didn't happen in a vacuum, certainly. There was a lot of people who were prisoners, as one of our guests also pointed out. This all occurred in such a climate. Can the U.S. then continue to claim moral authority as it serves abroad, as its people serve abroad? One can obviously doubt such a claim at this time. We'll keep a close eye on how that develops going forward and what happens then to Navy SEAL Team 7 and whether there will be actual court cases and accountability here in scope. I'll leave it there for now, though. I've been Waqar Rizvi. Thanks for watching.